The alarm clock's persistent hum cut through the quiet Brooklyn morning, a familiar companion to my early risings. It was still dark outside my window, but the city was already stirring, a low murmur of distant traffic promising another busy day. I am Judge Alice, and at 58 years old, I've presided over countless cases in this borough, seen the entire spectrum of human hope and despair pass through my courtroom doors. My apartment, with its view of brownstones and the faint outline of the Manhattan skyline, felt like a calm harbor before I plunged into the day's stormy waters. I made my coffee, strong and black, and reviewed the docket, each name a story waiting to unfold, each charge a consequence begging for understanding. My work isn't just about applying the law, it's about trying to find justice, which often feels like trying to catch mist in your hands. Walking to the courthouse, I passed the usual Brooklyn symphony, the clatter of a bagel shop opening, the cheerful greetings of neighbors, the rumbling subway beneath my feet. There's a resilience to this place, a spirit of pushing forward no matter what. But in my courtroom, I often saw that spirit stretched to its breaking point. My job had its moments of quiet satisfaction, helping families navigate difficult times or seeing someone turn their life around. But more often than not, it was a relentless cycle. The same faces, the same desperate situations, people caught in the grip of poverty, addiction, or bad choices. I'd seen it all, or so I thought. The real challenge wasn't just the complex legal arguments, it was battling the creeping feeling that I wasn't really making a difference. My internal nemesis was the fear of becoming numb, of letting the sheer volume of human suffering make me forget the individual human being. I worried about becoming just another cog in a big, unfeeling machine, signing off on sentences without truly seeing the person standing before me. I feared losing my own belief in the possibility of change, in the power of a second chance. I tried to combat that numbness. I would always ask questions, delve deeper than the police report, searching for the untold story. I encouraged rehabilitation programs, gave lighter sentences when I saw genuine remorse and a path forward. But sometimes, it felt like throwing a pebble into the ocean. I remembered a young woman I had tried to help last year. She had stolen food for her children. I connected her with a food bank, found her legal aid, but a few months later she was back, caught shoplifting again, her face etched with deeper desperation. Each setback was a heavy blow, a reminder of how vast the problems were, how small my individual efforts felt. The system itself, with its rules and procedures, sometimes felt like a wall rather than a bridge. It seemed to punish the consequences of poverty more than it addressed the roots of it. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me. I was tired, not just physically, but deep in my bones. I started wondering if I was just performing a ritual, a dance of justice that ultimately changed very little for the people who needed it most. I was nearing my lowest point, wondering if the endless stream of cases had finally worn away my ability to hope. Then came a day that felt like any other, but would turn out to be profoundly different. It was late in the afternoon, the courtroom air thick with the residue of a long day's cases. My gavel felt heavier than usual. The next case was a shoplifting charge, a simple theft of property. The defendant was a young man, barely out of his teens, named Marcus. He stood before me, head bowed, shoulders slumped, a picture of defeat. His clothes were worn but clean, and he looked thin, his eyes holding a profound sadness. The prosecutor read the charges: theft of a pair of men's dress shoes from a department store. Another petty crime, I thought, stifling a sigh. I was about to ask the standard questions, prepare for a standard ruling, maybe a small fine or community service, another name added to the endless list of consequences. But then something in Marcus's posture, a tremor in his voice as he quietly admitted guilt, made me pause. I looked at the worn-out sneakers he was wearing, the soles practically separated from the fabric. They looked like they'd seen 100 miles too many. "Marcus," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet hum of the courtroom, "tell me why. Why did you steal the shoes?" The public defender at his side seemed surprised by my direct question, as if expecting me to simply move to sentencing. Marcus hesitated, then looked up, his eyes meeting mine. There was no defiance, only a raw, unvarnished shame. "Your Honor," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I had a job interview." He explained he'd been searching for work for months, desperate to support his younger sister after their mother passed away. This interview for a stockroom position was his last hope. He had ironed his only clean shirt, practiced his answers, but when he looked at his tattered sneakers, he knew he couldn't show up like that. He couldn't afford new shoes, not even the cheapest pair. He had walked past the department store window, seen a pair on sale, and in a moment of utter desperation, he just took them. He was caught trying to leave the store. The shoes, he added, were still in the box. He hadn't even had the chance to wear them. He looked down again, as if the floor held all the answers to his despair. My heart ached. He wasn't stealing for profit or out of malice. He was stealing for a chance at dignity, a chance to simply try and lift himself and his sister out of a hole. I felt the familiar weariness, the internal nemesis of helplessness, rear its ugly head. The system was about to punish a desperate attempt to improve a life, to push someone further down when all they wanted was to climb up. This was it, the breaking point. If I just gave him a standard sentence, if I didn't see the man behind the crime, I truly would be nothing more than a cog. A sudden, unexpected surge of clarity washed over me, pushing away the fatigue. It was a choice: succumb to the numbness or fight for the humanity in front of me. The courtroom was silent, the prosecutor looked poised to speak, but I held up a hand. "Marcus," I said, my voice softer than usual but firm, "I understand your desperation." I looked around the courtroom, at the prosecutor, at the public defender, at my court clerk, who met my gaze with a knowing glance. This was it, my leap of faith. "I believe you when you say you were trying to make a better life for yourself and your sister. And while the law states that stealing is wrong, my conscience tells me that sometimes the law needs to bend a little for justice to truly be served." I paused, then continued, "I am dismissing this charge, Marcus." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Marcus's head shot up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "However," I continued, "I cannot send you to a job interview in those shoes." I reached into my robe pocket and pulled out my personal wallet. From it, I took out a crisp $50 bill. "My clerk, Mrs. Henderson, will accompany you to a shoe store across the street after court," I announced. "You will buy yourself a pair of interview shoes, and you will go to that interview tomorrow. And when you get that job, you will come back here, not as a defendant, but as a young man who chose a different path." I handed the money to Mrs. Henderson, whose eyes were now glistening. Marcus stood speechless, tears welling in his eyes. The prosecutor, initially stunned, simply closed his file. The whole courtroom felt a shift, a quiet understanding passing between everyone present. It wasn't about breaking the law, it was about mending a life. That moment changed everything for me. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long lifted. I felt energized, my purpose renewed. It was a reminder that true justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about recognizing the human story, offering grace, and believing in the power of a second chance. Mrs. Henderson later told me Marcus bought a modest but sturdy pair of black dress shoes. He came back 2 weeks later, not in court, but to my chambers, beaming. He got the job. He was working in the stockroom, saving money, and even planning to take evening classes. He looked like a different person, shoulders back, eyes bright. "Thank you, Judge Alice," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't just give me shoes, you gave me a fresh start. My new normal was less about judging and more about connecting." I started seeking out more opportunities to understand the root causes of the problems I saw, working with community organizations to help defendants find resources instead of just punishment. I encouraged my fellow judges to look beyond the surface, to see the person, not just the crime. And Marcus? He became a testament to the ripple effect of kindness. Years passed. I continued my work, always carrying that memory. One day, I was invited to speak at a community center about access to justice. As I walked onto the stage, a familiar face caught my eye in the front row. It was Marcus, older now, impeccably dressed, a confident smile on his face. He wasn't just working, he was now a manager at a local community outreach program, helping young people find jobs, connecting them with mentors, making sure they didn't fall into the same traps he almost did. After my speech, he approached me. "Judge Alice," he said, shaking my hand warmly, "you probably don't remember me, but you saved my life all those years ago." I remembered him perfectly. "I remember a young man who just needed a chance, Marcus," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "And you made the most of it." He told me how he always thought of that day, how that single act of kindness became the foundation of his new life, pushing him to pay it forward every single day. He even told me he bought dozens of pairs of new shoes for job applicants who couldn't afford them, something he called the Judge Alice Shoe Fund. It was a twist of fate, a beautiful, unexpected loop in the fabric of life. That day, I realized that my internal nemesis, the fear of insignificance in a vast, indifferent system, was conquered not by changing the whole world, but by changing one small piece of it, one shoe at a time. And sometimes, that's all it takes for things to truly get better. Not just for one person, but for everyone around them, creating a symphony of kindness that echoes far beyond a Brooklyn courtroom.